Well, good morning, fellas. And here we are. Can you see my screen okay?
I can.
And what just can you see? I'm not sure what you see on your screen. Does it show we're recording?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well,
Yes.
okay. Well, here we are. We're at our virtual Moot House meeting, and looking at John's Gospel. And let's just jump right in this morning. We're looking at this amazing miracle of Jesus, the feeding of the 5,000 plus. And last week we focused in on the filling of the baskets. I've really had fun meditating on this idea. I'm going to share some thoughts, and then I think Bill's got some thoughts too in regard to these leftovers. And before we jump into the text today, 14 and 15. But when they were filled, Jesus said to the disciples, "Go out and gather up the leftover fragments, so that nothing will be lost." And so they went out and they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves which were left over by those who had eaten. And what I have here is a summary. The crowd was filled, and then the 12 baskets were filled with the leftovers. How and where these fragments were distributed is unknown. We don't know that. However, my thought was this: is that, and I'm not stating this tritely or without thought. Some pretty deep thought here. Before I use this term kingdom truth, it's at least from my perspective. And with kingdom truth, oftentimes there is great mystery. Oftentimes with kingdom truth, there are two which appear to be opposing ideas held in tension. And I think as we age, we become more and more appreciative of these things. So within the kingdom, God's economy, what I wrote here is that everything is accounted for. All the scraps, everything left over is accounted for. And what this means is that everything has use. Everything belongs somewhere, somehow. And guys, that is worthy of meditation, of what that means and the ramifications of what that means in our everyday lives. And again, Dave, I have full sympathy to you and what you're going through in the terms of potential loss and the loss of people in their properties. But for some reason, what I'm attempting to do is hold the idea of abundance and great abundance and also great loss all in the same picture. And that is not an easy thing to do. So in regard to all that, do with this what you will. Everything belongs somehow. So anyway, moving on, could somebody read verses 14 and 15 on the screen or in your Bibles? Either way, we'll take what we get here. So, oh, wait a minute. Wait. I just saw Bill's face. Bill, share with us what your thoughts are.
Well, I pulled it out of Who Is This Man? It's an Ortberg book. And in it, he talks about, forgiving enemies and stuff. He refers to first time that Jesus goes, quote, over to the other side, he runs into the demoniac who, he drives the spirits out into the pigs. They run over the cliff, and he's sane. But he tells him to go tell his story. But the rest of the story is Jesus returned to the Decapolis a short time later. This time, great crowds came to see him. They ran throughout the whole region, carried the sick on mats, etc., etc. And earlier they talk about, he says that in Hebrew scriptures, God promised to drive the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgasites, Amorites, and Jebusites out of the promised land. These were known as the 7 nations of Canaan, and they were still referred to that way even in Jesus' day. Paul related that God overthrew the 7 nations of Canaan and gave their land to people as an inheritance. Also, the Decapolis is the center of Roman power. So the point being is when he fed them, and they got 7 baskets left, his earlier feeding, the 12 baskets, symbolic that this was for Israel, the 12 tribes. But the 7 baskets said, this is for the Gentiles, the nations.
Oh.
And so it was very symbolic, meaning that what was left over was symbolic. Now we're on the other side with the 7 nations that were driven out. And guess what? We have 7 baskets left over for them too.
So it's a symbolism that points towards inclusion.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Interesting. Yeah. 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 I like that. So could we go back? Thanks for sharing that, Bill. And my mind, sorry, I forgot there for a minute. My mind's still with Dave and what they're going through. So, well,
what Bill's just described is a prophetic picture.
What's that, Dave?
What Bill described, as he just explained, is a prophetic picture of the inclusion of we Gentiles in the promise. So it's a very valid picture.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. So could somebody read now? Could somebody read verses 14 and 15?
Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, they said, this is truly the prophet who is to come into the world. So Jesus, perceiving they were intending to come and take him by force and make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone.
All right, good. Thank you. So that's where we're at here. It's kind of the aftermath. Well, it is the aftermath. It's this is what happened. And that's what we're gonna focus in on this morning, on this reaction or the action of the crowd. So first of all, looking at verse 14, the underlined portion, when the people saw the sign that Jesus had performed, they said to one another, truly, this is the prophet who is to come into the world. So I'm going to run through several slides here kind of quickly as we move our way through verses 14 and 15. And what I've got written below is, it is clear that the people around the time of Jesus were anticipating a deliverer to liberate them from their oppression. We are all aware of that. They were looking for someone. For example, John 4:25, and this is where we have seen this idea already within John's gospel account. The woman at the well stated, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When that one comes, he will declare all things to us. So there's just one example held by even people that were a little bit on the outside of the mainstream, of Samaritans. There were, of course, variations in regard to what this deliverer would be like. And one view, and is held by this Samaritan woman, was that the anticipated deliverer would be like a prophet, like Moses, thus the term here used in the text. And then I'm quoting directly out of Deuteronomy 18, verse 15, and it quotes, the Lord your God will raise up a prophet, Moses is speaking, like me, from among you, from your countrymen, you shall listen to him. So that was spoken way back. And of course, the Samaritans were following the Torah, and that was a pretty key verse to them. In all aspects, regardless of nuance, the people at the time of Jesus were looking for one to deliver them from their current oppressive state. One to deliver them from their oppressive state. At Passover time, again, remember guys, this is taking place, interesting detail that John puts in the text. that this was occurring at Passover. And at this time in particular, people were remembering God's deliverance through Moses from the suffering they experienced while in Egypt. This was, in a sense, their salvation as a group. That's how the Jewish populations viewed the term. The term salvation was what occurred during the time of the Exodus through Moses and God's mighty deliverance. So when the crowd recognized Jesus as the one, they naturally responded in a way that seemed right to them at the time. And when Jesus, on the other hand, perceived what the crowd was about to do, crown him as king, and again, their actions were based on their understanding of him as the one and their recognition of him, he withdrew. He rejected this movement to crown him king. And of course, guys, that's not news to any of you. Because of his response, and now I'm going to move towards some thoughts here. Because of his response, apparently, it is possible to recognize Jesus as the one, but yet misclassify what to do with that information. And that's where I want to go with this. It is possible, according to the text, to recognize Jesus as the one. They were embracing him as the one who was going to deliver them. But yet their actions, but yet they didn't know what to do. They misclassified what to do with that information based on Jesus's response. So let's take a closer look at this. And so because this is Passover time, what I want to do is go back and rewind and look at this text out of Exodus, because this really sets the scene in the framework of common understanding during this time about this idea of deliverance, of salvation. So the Lord is speaking, and he says, I will bring you up out of affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Amorite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. These are the very people Bill was mentioning in his comments earlier. To a land flowing with milk and honey. So this was God's promise to Moses to do through Moses. Remember, God doing something to him, speaking of Abraham and Moses, to do something through him. And so there are two aspects in regard to what God was about to do in this act of salvation. The first is a direct quote, I will bring you out. There is a coming out of bondage, of being released from freedom, released into freedom, out from under the tyranny is one aspect. The other aspect is, I will bring you to a land flowing with milk and honey. So there is a coming out, and there is a moving towards to deliver you to something else, guys. And this is absolutely critical that I think you all understand this, but I'd like to talk about this. This isn't just found in Exodus. This is an idea that permeates the writers of Scripture. Paul is clear late in the New Testament. Paul talks about putting off and putting on. There is always this twofold aspect of what it means, of what salvation means, this deliverance from but God plans to deliver us to something else. Saving from is on the left side, and saving to. Both of these are true. Both of these are absolutely true, as punctuated throughout all of Scripture. However, and this is my opinion, for what it's worth, we as human beings, for some reason, we really have a hard time holding two things in our heads at the same time. And these two aspects became separated through a long word, compartmentalization, which we as human beings are really good at. And the one being emphasized over the other. We really have a hard time holding ideas in tension. And by the time we fast forward to the New Testament, to the time of Jesus, this thinking of the emphasis over the bringing out had fully developed into what I'm calling religious tribalism, characterized by exclusivity. And could somebody, I've got a reference there, I didn't have enough room on the slide to put the text. Could somebody read Mark 11:17? Oh, maybe you don't have a Bible there.
Hold on, I have it here. It said here that, as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you've made it a den of robbers"? That's Mark 11:17, right?
Yeah, Mark 11:17, and this is cleansing of the temple, Mark's
Right.
account. And I've always been enamored about that saying there, because Jesus is directly stating that this temple, this symbol of Jewish faith, this pinnacle Jewish location, was meant to be a temple, a place of worship for all the nations. That is incredible. But yet, he criticizes the religious authority by saying, you've made it a den of robbers. You've turned it into something totally different. And I think what's behind that is this idea that is common to human nature, of this emphasis that the Jewish religious authority said, we've got the corner on the truth. We have the right God. We have God. And a de-emphasis on what this was all to be about in their lives, which is the second half, I will bring you to. An emphasis on the first half, on the first truth, is simply what that leads to without the second, clearly stated, is tribalism and exclusivity, that we're the ones that have the right God. So therefore, as we examine Jesus's response in verse 15,
Mike,
you've
just described present day Protestantism.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And
Elaborate.
I'm right, and you're wrong.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think it's not only today. I think it's been through. I think it's part of the human problem. And
anyway, thanks. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Therefore, as we examine Jesus's response in verse 15, one explanation, this is my explanation, could be that he refused the crowd's kingship offer because it would only contribute to further confusion of his mission by reinforcing the common notion of religious tribalism.
Mm.
If,
that, oh, go ahead.
let me finish and then I'll open it up and let you guys talk. If he were to accept their crowning offer, he would be acknowledging a kingship role on their terms, thus feeding the common human tendency towards, we have the right God, and that means you obviously don't. So there's been some stirring amongst the group, so let's hear your comments on this.
I believe the foundational reason that he didn't accept the crown is because that's not what the Father told him to do.
Yeah, because Jesus only did what he saw the Father doing. And so, Dave, go a little bit deeper with that. Why? What's your thought? Why would the Father not?
In a simplified perspective, he could have, were he to have accepted the crown, what you just described is what would happen. There'd be this segmentation and this further tribalism thing and everything else, but it would also negate the very reason that he came, which was to provide a sacrifice for all who would believe him. So he could not do anything that would, as you described it, tie him to any one particular sect or group or any rest of that, because he didn't come for a group or a sect. He came for all.
Yeah.
And he knew that, and the Father knew that. So, and we have the luxury of knowing that after 2,000 years of cussing and discussing.
Yeah. And did Bill, you've got something?
Oh yeah, it's burning on me. I mean, this gets echoed all throughout. A little later in chapter 7, there's a whole section on where they're talking about, is this the Messiah and stuff. And one place he said, he puts down here, he says, 31. He says, when the Christ comes, will he do more miraculous signs than this man? I mean, they were looking at him. I'm thinking of when John the Baptist sent his representatives to Christ, this whole thing came to a head too. They said, are you the one to come, or should we look for another? And so he has him hang around and he shows what he's doing, echoing the servant in Isaiah. And I don't think they wanted a servant. So I think you're right, Mike. N.T. Wright helped me on this, but basically, it isn't they didn't think Jesus was Messiah. They said, he's the Messiah. He's not the Messiah we want. And it ends up totally in front of Pilate screaming, we have no king but Caesar. So the Messiah came and they looked at him and said, no, we don't want you. I think that becomes the crux of this.
Yes. The way I see it, I mean, I've thought about this now for a couple of weeks and if rehashed this. And the imagery in my head is that these people were excited. They were enthusiastic. We've got the answer. Remember the old, I found it, you can have it too. The bumper sticker. And I think that we as human beings have this common propensity, there's that term again, to, I could see them go get a crown. Let's crown him right now. That's a done deal. We got the one. We got it. And for some reason, what happens in our heads is once we think we got it, it leads to all kinds of troubling things. Thus, what David said earlier on this, Protestantism today. And therein is, and in my mind, therein is where this emphasis on, we got the truth. And if I got the truth, then anybody that has a little different position is obviously wrong. And I think that is this binary way that our heads are natural. It's got real value, but I think in regard to some deeper things in life, not so fast.
Can I interrupt one more time? I promise it's the last one.
Yeah, you can.
I try. There's something about owning the truth, or having the truth, that makes you the owner of the situation. I mean, if these guys crowned Jesus,
Yeah,
although they're crowning him as king, they're putting him in the co-pilot seat because they have expectations of their king. And in essence, he may be their king, but they're going to be driving the show.
Bill, you said what I was trying to say so much better. Thank you.
Yeah, because if you if you leave it for mystery, if you leave it, it's not. There's a little bit of things I don't totally. Then you let Jesus drive the ship, because once you own it, it's you claim it and you're running everything. And Jesus is my co-pilot bumper stickers kind of fits your mold.
Now, what we're not aware of is that very truth while we're in it. I mean, people will go to the grave. I was right. Everybody else is wrong. And it's sad. It's really sad. So, so let's move on. Table time. We got a good 20 minutes to talk about this idea. In our story, there's a large crowd of people who recognize Jesus as the promised one. They'd all been waiting for. That's what we see. They acknowledged him. They acknowledged they were not rejecting him. On the contrary, they were accepting him. Their collective insight led them towards a corresponding action that was rejected by Jesus. And we've had some opinions of why, which are certainly valid. And so here's the question I'd like us to talk about in our breakout rooms. What does this story have to teach us today about the relationship between recognizing Jesus as the promised one? And we've got all kinds of evangelical terms that we use for this recognition of Jesus as the one. And on the other side, what do we do with that information? So, yes.
I'm going to opt out of table time if you don't mind. And
Fun, Dave.
Thank you guys for the prayers and consideration, and we'll check in with you later.
Yeah, I know you got
Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
A lot going
Thanks,
on.
Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Yep. All right. So if you need to snap that picture, again, what's this story teaching us? You know, we primarily think that Jesus's issue with people was rejection. Here is the flip side, is absolute recognition. But yet when they tried to recognize him in the way that they thought was appropriate, Jesus rejected it. We've got opinions why. And what does this have to say to our lives in our day and age? So I'm gonna I'll get us in groups, and then we'll come back about 10 minutes till and talk about it. So let's see. Breakout rooms. Here we go.
Looks like Carl joined us just in time.
Hey, Carl. Oh, good
Hey,
morning,
good
Carl.
morning. How are you?
Here you go.
Good.
group were, I guess, praying for something related to Dave. Did he?
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, his mountain property is, well, they don't know for sure. He doesn't know for sure whether it's been spared or not, and the uncertainty with this fire continues on in terms of its spread and what it's doing.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So we were in prayer about that. Yeah. And maybe that's why he left the group early here moments ago.